Welcome to the Programming Lions podcast, where we are on a mission to build productive young patriots. Today, we have Mitchell Rutherford on the show. He was recently highlighted in a Wall Street Journal article regarding standing up and taking the courage to speak out against cell phones and social media and how they're harming youth. He knows this directly from his experience in the classroom as a biology teacher for many years. He even ran a social media detox program for his students. We're going to break it down, all the details. So sink in and let's check it out. Hey, Mitchell, thanks for joining the Programming Lions podcast. We are excited to have you on and hear a unique story that you've got and talk about a serious issue that is impacting the youth, schools, and all of that. But before we get into all that exciting content and topic, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you for having me on. This is a first to be interviewed on another podcast. I like the format you have with your boys here. Getting kids involved in the good stuff is so important. I have been a teacher for the last 12 years, high school for 11 of those 12 years, and I teach the primarily sophomores, but I got a few freshmen. I've had upperclassmen in the AP Bio class, those juniors and seniors. So yeah, the last 11 years, and I live down in Tucson, and the classes I teach are biology and AP biology, and science has always been a passion and interest of mine. But I've really shifted my gears as education has become a little bit more of my calling. Now I focus more on teaching the student rather than teaching the subject. I love teaching science, and fortunately I landed in biology, which is the study of life. I kind of take that to mean the study of my humans in class, the kids that I care so much for. And just in the last few years since the pandemic, things have changed, obviously, dramatically in education. And so I have just decided to leave the field, leave my school, mostly because of cell phones and kind of mental health issues between myself and the students in class. So it's a big transition time for me. Trying to figure out a different way to help kids grow up in this difficult time.
The boys have some questions lined up, so let's go.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So I have two start questions for you. The first one is, what do you think makes a great teacher?
Will, that's a good question. A good teacher is the one that's memorable, that allows you to enjoy the subject and feel more confident in it in a way that you maybe not have felt before. So kids kind of know, like, oh, I really like math. And then I'll ask them, okay, did you have a really good teacher? And they say, yeah, I had this awesome teacher. It was so fun in that class. They were really engaged. They would always explain things to me. No matter how many times I asked them for help, they always had a different way of explaining it. And we're always there and excited and passionate about the subject. In those ways, essentially, the teacher makes the subject. And students that come out of school feeling confident in any different subject, you can always ask them. You can ask adults. They'll always be able to tell you, oh yeah, I love English and I had a great English teacher. I love math. I had a great math teacher in 8th grade. I love biology. My biology teacher in high school was so awesome. And oftentimes when you dig into that, the awesomeness of the teacher is about how excited they are, how passionate they are, how energetic they are, how involved they are. They stand up, they walk around, they interact, they talk to the kids, and they teach things in maybe a creative way and try and find unique ways of getting at the material. And they really care about the kids. I think it's about listening to the students. It's about wanting to understand them and form those relationships and give advice and teach the whole student, rather than just like, you need to learn this math, you need to learn this science, here's the test, and it's all academics. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, because I've had a few really good teachers, luckily.
Is that the same for you, Max?
Oh yeah, I've had most of his teachers, and I do like them. They're really nice. So yeah.
What would you say are their personality qualities?
Well, first of all, one of my teachers basically teaches the whole day, and I like how he makes it fun. He adds sometimes if we're doing math, he adds this math game that we have to do.
I had a really good history teacher, which is a great storyteller, and that's a good history person.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also she was nice, which is also what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Well, our next question, speaking of teachers and teaching, why did you leave teaching?
Yeah, I left teaching about 3 weeks ago after this 11 years at the high school, mainly because I was having mental health struggles, primarily anxiety, but also some clinical, relatively severe depression as well. And it really just started this past year. I can almost pinpoint it to like September of 2023. Teaching's always hard. I teach in a public school, and Arizona is 48th in the nation. We don't pay our teachers enough or value the education system or the public education system quite enough. And it's hard in general. I got 50 minutes with 30 kids, and then I got 50 minutes with another 30 kids, and then 50 minutes with another 30 kids. And so it's this constant kind of high pace, fast paced, high intensity. Lots of kids are struggling. Lots of kids don't know the subject, or they think they don't like the subject, or they don't like school, or they don't like homework, or their parents aren't supporting them. The parents didn't read to them so there's always been struggles in education. Like, it's always hard to be a teacher. It's a live performance, like a podcast or something, except you got to do it 5 times in a row.
Yeah.
And you got to teach some people stuff, right? And you got to be exciting, and you got to say it right. And then you got to answer questions and do that 5 times in a row every single day.
Yeah.
And some of your audience is not that interested in what you have to say. And after the pandemic, kids were wild and they were crazy. They still were trying to figure out, we were all trying to figure out how to socialize and be in public. And so that was pretty fun for me, because I like the energy. I like the wild and raw and crazy and goofy and can't sit down and all that stuff. So that was pretty good, even though it was really, really challenging. Then this last year, something kind of shifted. I really felt like there was an apathy, just a lack of interest in kind of anything or many things. I saw my students self-isolating, not wanting to socialize or not knowing how to socialize, thinking and saying that like everyone's weird, or nobody likes me, or I don't have any friends, and behaving that way too. And just really quiet classrooms with low energy, and kids just not really inspired. I might hear things like, college is too expensive, I definitely can't go to college, or though this doesn't matter anyway, I'm never going to use this. And I'd always heard some of that, but I was just hearing a lot of it. It was just a lot of students just really not having a lot of hope for the future, or curiosity or interest, and just having a hard time socializing and having fun and doing the kid stuff. Most of the time, the most fun you have in school, yes, you got good teachers, right? But the most fun you have in school is your friends. Like, oh, I was doing this with my friends. Then I was hanging out with my friends in between classes and in classes. And I was working on this project, and we studied together, and presentations and group work. Is like, school is not just the academics. That's what the pandemic really taught us, is that if you take away all the socialization and the relationships, school is pretty tough. I mean, it's my job to really inspire that hope for the future and inspire that creativity and curiosity. And so I definitely was trying to do that, but it was just so much harder this year for some reason. It took me till December until I finally realized, oh my gosh, most of this is cell phones. Wow. Kids are on their cell phones, and that causes them to self-isolate, to not develop the social skills of hanging out with their friends and talking to people, and like that awkward conversation with that person in your class that you've never met, and you turn to them and you're like, hi, my name's Will. Hi, my name's Max. Hi, my name's Mitchell. Like, did you finish the homework from last night, or did you hear what they just said? Like, those really, really basic things. Kids were just like, I'm going to stare at my phone instead. Once I realized the phones were the issue, like the main issue. I mean, I always knew that they were a problem and you got to manage it and everything. Once I realized it was like the number 1, 2, and 3 reason that was preventing students from achieving and being interested in school at all, I started to fight back really hard on phones. And
Good.
Ultimately, that became pretty productive, and we solved a lot of problems second semester. But I had to leave teaching mostly because I was not really there for my wife, and we had just gotten pregnant with our first little baby girl. And I realized it was not my top priority. And I really wanted to be a good dad. And my new daughter, who's 3 weeks old now, was just born in the summer, I really want to be there for her.
That's as noble a reason as any to refocus yourself. And It's interesting. We'll unpack the cell phone issue a little bit more. Before we get into that, I'd like to ask you about this Wall Street Journal article that came out you were featured in. I'm curious, for a biology teacher in a school in Tucson, this must have blown up your universe a little bit in terms of attention. And that's how we got in touch, actually. We saw the article, and so we ended up reaching out.
I was kind of flattered when the journalist contacted me. I was interested in my story. And in general, I'm an improv guy. I'm resourceful. I don't really think too much about the future. I'm not a big planner. My wife will confirm that, and everyone else will just kind of say, I like to plan things loosely and roughly, but the details, I'm not a detailed guy in terms of future planning. So I didn't really think that there would be much to it. I was like, as you can tell, I don't mind talking and explaining things. It's part of the teacher in me.
Sure.
And so when she called me and wanted to have a conversation, I just let it out. Then when the article came out, my wife was really proud of me and we were really excited. The photographer came out and the students were really excited. Oh my gosh, this is the Wall Street Journal. I had no concept of it spreading. Then it spread. At first, it was okay. The first couple of days, it was all positive. It was like, thank you for bringing this to light. This is super important. This is the big problem. The school year was winding down. There's only 2 weeks left. And 2 days after the Wall Street Journal article came out, a local TV reporter came to film me, and that blew up even more. And then I was getting calls from and emails from Fox News and Dr. Phil's TV network. And then there was articles being published about me by people that never met me and never interviewed me at all. It wasn't wrong information, but it was just like, this is now out of my hands. And again, most people were like, this is an important topic that we need to be discussing and talking about. Trust me, I had been for the entire second semester. I've been talking to my colleagues and administration and trying to figure this problem out so that we can have a positive solution moving forward. But yeah, the end of the year, I'm 100% focused on taking care of my students, getting them through finals. Graduation's coming up, and I got a bunch of seniors that I'm really proud of and want to celebrate with. And I got to clean out my classroom, and my wife is 8.5 months pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's
a handful.
So I slipped into some very, very serious anxiety. Many, many days, for hours and hours. I just had a pit in my stomach and really was trying to balance a lot of things that were so out of my control. That was hard, to say the least. Really had to lean on my wife a lot. I really had to lean on my friends and my family. I had long runs, long bike rides.
Right.
I try and sleep and meditate and do the right things, but my goodness, it was really hard.
I can imagine it was a lot. And then all this Wall Street Journal news and ripple effects from that blowing up. Without further ado, let's get into cell phones and social media in schools. This is a really serious topic, and you've seen it firsthand, and you've implemented some changes firsthand. And so we wanted to talk through some Q&A around how serious it is, what we can do about it, students, parents, schools, etc. So let's get into some of those.
All right. So phones and social media in schools, I just want to know, how are they distracting kids?
That's a good question, Max. The thing with a phone is that it's designed to be addictive, and it will light up your brain like a drug or a flashing light or sugar. And however, unlike flashing lights or drugs or sugar or whatever, a phone, if it's in your hand, even if it's in your pocket, even if it's nearby and you can reach it and touch it and you know that it's there, your mind is connected to it and is thinking, oh, let me check and see if it vibrates, if it makes a noise, if it lights up. Or even if you have it totally on silent, you're thinking, oh, I've gotten some dopamine release from that phone in the past. I've turned it over and, oh, there's a note from my friend. Oh, there's a text from my friend. Oh, there's a Snapchat. So you're constantly have that there. And that's the distraction right there.
Okay.
I think we can personalize this a bit, right, guys? When you have iPad time, sometimes it's hard to get off, or we have to remind you. And similar with gaming, if we do some gaming, it's difficult to get off. Once you get started, and then there's this like gravitational force that wants to take them back to it. And I felt it too, Mitchell, like with my phone. And we've started this social media brand and podcast. And so there is like a little bit of a rush. Oh, we got some people leaving comments or likes or whatever it might be on one of our posts, or one of our posts is blowing up. And so there is this instinctual, I want to see. And it's difficult. I can see how people get trapped in it. I have been fortunate to where I've tried to plan my day where, okay, here's the buckets of time where I will jump on social media and look at comments so that I monitor that and I don't get crazy about it. But I can totally see how people get just really pulled into it, especially if there's no oversight of it, right?
Guardrails. And,
Yeah.
and what you mentioned there is exactly what works and exactly what I worked with my students is like, okay, I'm not saying you should never use your phone, right? Or that you should never eat food or never have sugar. The thing is that you have to have guidelines. You have to have some sort of parameters and be able to hold yourself back and be like, you can't eat sugar all day, every single day. Right. Yeah. It would get disgusting or something. But just the fact that it's not accessible to you is like when you say, I'm not going to check social media for the first hour in the morning, then you have that rule and you say, that's how I'm going to operate. My mind can be free to spend time with my family and to whatever. And if I think about going on my phone, I say, no, that's just not what I do. And the same with some people are like, I'm not having lunch until noon. I'm not going to go work out until I get done with work, or I'm not going to play video games until I finish my homework. All of those things, that's what we as humans do. We're just animals, just like dogs. And so we have to have routine and structure, parameters and limits. I teach evolution, so I understand, and everybody knows human beings are alive because we're social. That's the only reason that we've made it on this planet is because of socialization. And social media is so effective because it harnesses that evolutionary instinct to like want to be liked, to want to share, to want to communicate, to want to spread knowledge and have conversations. Those are all very base human instincts, desires, and specializations. And that's all really, really good. You just have to be careful when it goes too far.
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
And podcasting is an awesome thing for this. And I love what you guys are doing here because this is about connection with real people. Like you three are connecting and then having your mom, wife involved as well is like now it's connected as a family business, right?
Yeah.
And you are having not just like tiny little, we're not just on here singing and dancing for 30 seconds to get extra likes on TikTok. Like that's not the point. The point is we're talking about serious, real stuff. We're thinking, we're communicating, we're learning how to socialize and interact and think deeply and be curious and try and wrestle with some complicated things. And long form podcasting is hands down one of the best things that phones and the internet and social media has opened up and allowed for. Sitting and listening is also very evolutionarily based as just human beings sitting around and listening to a story. Like that goes back hundreds of thousands of years.
What are the impact on teachers and learning from these phones?
Yeah. So the distraction with kids is it makes teachers' jobs harder than they already are. And that drains us and exhausts us. What I was realizing, it came to me, I don't remember exactly what month, but I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not having fun. And a lot of what having fun in school is for teachers is creating relationships and connections with their students. When you come to class and you're interested in the subject and you ask questions and you smile and you laugh and you study and you have a good time and you make friends in there and
like
you
a
go and ask your
reward loop
teacher,
feedback.
hey, what did you do this weekend? That is what gets teachers through, right?
Yeah.
And when kids are just zoned in on their phones, we don't get the relationships. The kid doesn't get the relationships with their students. And so I don't get the joy of watching kids become friends. And I don't get the benefit of kids interacting with me, which is so fun. Kids say the darndest things. Okay. And at every age,
They do.
Kids are so,
I can confirm they do say the darndest things.
No.
you're so interesting. You're so interesting. You're so fun. You're so goofy. And at every age, it's different. There's something very joyous about interacting with children and interacting with human beings.
I can definitely see what you're saying in terms of, as a teacher, it must be, incredibly rewarding when you see the bells go off, or them really get a topic, or be curious about something and ask questions and go deeper. And then that's like hitting your dopamine reward
Yep.
loop, right? But that's in
Exactly.
a positive way. Like you're actually communicating with people, as we talked about earlier. That leads to a deterioration in the academic absorption and the happiness of teachers and students. That is sad that that's happening. I guess maybe that leads us into the next question that Max has.
So, what can parents do differently about this?
Yeah, the solutions do come from all angles. There's stuff that I did as a teacher that was really effective. And there's stuff that students can do that's really effective. From a parent standpoint, I've never had a teenager, so caveat. I've never had a child that can speak. But
though.
yeah, I'm working on it. Right. But what I would recommend and what I've seen that works, I had a student who was really struggling in class, and I sent an email to her dad, and her dad locked her phone from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I didn't find out about this for a while. And then when I started looking at her screen time for the phone detox challenge we did, she was like, I can't look at my screen time because it's locked. I said, what? She's like, oh, yeah, ever since you talked to my dad, he's locked my phone. And now I'm only on it for like an hour and a half at home. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, this is great. I'm
This
so
is
glad.
amazing. Yeah.
I didn't even know I had this positive. And this is a girl who went from an F to an A
Wow.
months before. She brought up her grade right before the end of the first semester. And then in January, she was hands down my most improved student in that period, and maybe my most improved over the whole year. Not until the very last month of the year did I find out it was just because I emailed her dad and he put a limit on her phone. And it was genius. And I'm sure she
Wow.
didn't like it at the time, right? And I'm sure she disliked him, but we have to set those parameters. That's just good parenting, right?
Yeah.
This is when you sleep. This is when you eat. This is when you socialize. This is when you're on your iPad. This is when you go to school. All of those
Yeah.
routines and structures. It's maybe not the most fun thing to do as a parent, but my goodness,
Yeah.
it helps the child bloom.
That's an
So that's-
amazing collaboration between a teacher and a parent. But as you, I'm sure, know, not all parents listen or take action. And a lot of them, in my observation with 2 kids in school, it seems that they're becoming more apathetic. Is that a challenge with parents?
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to know exactly what the deal is with why parents aren't doing that relatively simple thing. The world's in a fragile place right now. A lot
Yeah.
of people are struggling. And like I struggled with, it's not fun to be a policeman.
Right.
It's not fun to take away the drug from the drug addict.
Mhm.
So it's not fun to tell your kid, hey, this thing that you are really closely attached to, I'm just going to take it away. I'm going to limit it. And I'm going to have to deal with you screaming and crying and being frustrated and yelling at me and blaming me and blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's not fun. And I know that now. When I have a crying baby, it's like, it is not fun to hear. And if it was a crying 15-year-old who was telling me, I hate you, you're ruining my life, or taking away my phone, that's awful. So I have a lot of sympathy. Yeah. And it's hard.
Just for a phone, too. I mean,
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that they're so dependent on it. They're so reliant on it and attached. So parents, I think I have a lot of sympathy. I have a lot of compassion that that's a hard thing to do. But that is a good thing to do. Other things that I think parents can do, it can be on a simpler level too. It can be like, check your kids' screen time every day. It can be, take your kids' phones at night. You're sleeping, your phone is going to be charging in my room from 10 a.m. until when you wake up, or something like that, right? Let's prioritize your sleep and your physical and your mental health, or just plug your phone in a different room. I mean, we all need reminders. And the kids, most of the kids, when they see how bad it is for them, which they did by the end of the year, because I was just talking about it all the time, they wanted that help. In many ways, a child craves that structure and that discipline.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage for the parent to provide that. And sometimes the kid can discipline themselves and they can hold themselves back. Right. Sometimes friends can hold them accountable. Teachers can hold them accountable. There's where schools can hold them accountable. But parents, at the end of the day, have a lot of control,
Sure.
because they're with their kid. They know their kid.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. And How about school policies? Maybe, boys, why don't you share the policy at your school? And
Yeah. At our school, we have a no tech policy, so we can't have our phones during class.
Can't wear this.
Yeah. So not on school property. It's where you have to be out of school. Which means, like, even if school's out, you have to be out of the whole school property to get to have your phone.
so you can have it in your bag or in your locker, but you
Yeah, you
can't
just
be
cannot
on
access
it inside the school building or grounds. So that's a pretty, I guess, a pretty strict no tech policy, which is maybe rare.
Yeah, I think it's going to become more common. It's definitely one of the solutions we were talking about at my high school, and something we've heard about from other schools too. And it sounds wonderful. It'd be awesome if that was a rule that football games, baseball games, and like movie theaters, if they could have someone in there that's just like, nope, nobody.
Wouldn't that be? Oh, that would.
Can't be on your phone. What about restaurants? Okay, I mean, like, what
that
about?
would be so cool.
Now we're getting somewhere. This would be amazing. You ever go to what drives me insane, Mitchell, is when I go to a sports game or a concert or whatever it is, and like most of the audience is they're like this. They're at the concert, but they're recording it on their phone. And then I usually will ask people, how often do you go back and look at that video of the concert that you were at? Never. So like, why didn't you just enjoy the concert while you were there instead of recording the entire thing on your phone that you're never going to watch? It's the weirdest thing. Or a lot of people just want to show that they were there, right? Like selfies. But anyway, I agree with you. It drives me insane. Like, why can't people just enjoy the concert?
Yeah, it's a really interesting phenomenon. I can feel it with my daughter now too, that like there's a balance between I want to take pictures and remember this, but every time that you are trying to capture something, you're missing what's actually there.
Yeah.
And you are planning for some future where you feel I'm going to want to remember this. And there is something in the human being mind that wants to remember things and wants to cherish things and whatnot. But if all you're focused on is future remembering, you miss out on the present. And that's what a lot of Buddhism has helped me understand. And the experiences you have, they only become all the more rich and interesting and cherished because they are temporary. I had a story about a student who, during the phone detox challenge, she said, well, mister, I'm going to be on my phone a lot tonight because I'm driving to a concert in Phoenix. It was a 2-hour drive. And I said, who are you going with? She's like, oh, my boyfriend and my mom and my best friend. I was like, you're going to be driving in the car with your 3 favorite people to a concert, an awesome activity, and you want to be on your phone during that time? Like, what? Talk to people. Like,
help me understand.
That's insane.
Hold on. And then at the concert, I'm going to want to take videos and pictures. So I was like, you're going to have terrible audio and video quality, and you're going to be looking in this tiny little thing instead of actually experiencing this person, this real live famous person. And it's so interesting because at some point it's like, well, everybody does it. And this is what I think I'm supposed to do. Like, well, everyone else took pictures of their concerts and posted it on their social media.
Right.
So maybe that's what you do when you're there. And everybody else brings their phone out at the dinner table so that they can like, oh, let me just look up something really quick. Or, oh, I thought of something. Let me write it down real quick. If you can do everything all the time, then you're not ever doing one thing deeply at a time.
Yeah, it's a great point. I love this conversation, and it's become culturally acceptable or almost promoted to do that, and it's just so weird.
It's weird.
It is so weird.
Yeah, I was going to mention that where, like, oftentimes I see kids at restaurants just, like, on iPads or their mom's phone, just, like, playing stupid games. You mentioned something about detox results. So I heard your social media detox on your students. Can you please can you please tell us about the results of that?
Yeah, so we did a habit project for August, September, and then we did a sleep project for November, Nocturnal November, I called it. And then we did, and then in January, we started off with a change challenge. And then over in May, we did the phone detox challenge. Essentially, the secret is, I got different names for this stuff, but it's all the same thing. It's all about, can you establish different routines or habits in your life to change your life? Can you break certain bad habits? Can you establish certain routines, have the discipline, develop the discipline? Because if you automatically know, I'm going to brush my teeth every single night before I go to bed, it's not a decision. You don't think about it. You don't think, when should I do it? How long should I do it? Where should I do it? Blah, blah, blah. All of that, that's a waste of mental space. That's a waste of your brain. And so you just have habits and routines and rules, and you're no longer questioning it. There's no emotion attached to it. In a lot of those projects, a lot of people's focuses were their phones. Let's get off my phone before bed. Let's get off my phone in the morning. The phone detox challenge specifically, I said, okay, forget it. I'm about to leave this school. I want you to know the last thing that you remember me for, I will tell you, the biggest thing holding you back is your phone. It's not you. It's not because you're not motivated. It's not because you're not capable. Your phone is holding you back, and it's not your fault, but you can fix it. So I had my kids show me their screen time. You can have it track the activity and the apps, and it'll tell you your total screen time, and then it will break it down and say, this much time was spent on socials, this much time was spent on games, this much time on entertainment, and then they've got different categories. And then it will also break it down this is in screen time in iPhone, and I think it's on digital wellness for Android. And I started doing it myself, and I recommend it to everyone. Adults, this isn't just a kid problem. This is everybody, right? Yeah. And so they would show me, and what I saw, I'll tell you the results that I saw specifically. In general, kids have screen times roughly, the average might be like 9 hours a day.
Okay? What?
Holy
what?
smokes.
But your eyes are going to get burnt. You'll be blind in like 2 weeks.
So there were some kids that were down naturally. Some kids down naturally in like the 3, 4, 5 range. Okay. And then
that's still so much though.
And there's a few, I mean, it's kind of a bell curve, right? Mm-hmm. So like there's a few on the extreme that get up into like the 13, 14, 15. Whoa. And then occasionally there's like a 19 or something like that.
Oh my
gosh. And so yes, it should shock you, right? But most people are somewhere in that like 8 to 7 to 10 kind of range. That's where most people are. And when you look into it a little closer, there's a good chunk of students are 2 to 4 hours every day on TikTok. The average student,
that's so much,
is 2 to 4 hours on TikTok. That's definitely the top app. The second top app is going to be Snapchat. A lot of kids there, I'm seeing somewhere from 2 to 4 hours on Snapchat. Occasionally I'll see YouTube on there, but then I started to like drill in. At first it was just like, oh, this is shocking, this is interesting. And I was like, the big thing that I would ask students is like, okay, is what you're doing just consuming? Is everything coming from outside in? Or is there anything that you're creating from inside out? Yeah. Right. And that can make a big difference. Right. And the second thing that I would always try and look at is that if a kid's top app was Snapchat or Instagram, I saw a lot of that. I'd be like, okay.
Really? We don't even have Snapchat, Instagram, or TikTok.
For good reason, right? That's because
we're lucky.
You can actually socially connect with people face to face. And that's what I would ask my students. I'd say, okay, so you had 3 hours on Instagram yesterday. Was most of that scrolling, or were you talking to people? And most people would say, oh, I was talking to people. It was direct messages and stuff, right? And although that's not the best option at all, and there's lots of distraction and scrolling certainly to be embedded in that, I would then ask, okay, are you talking to people face to face, like that you see face to face, that you went to grade school with them, it is family members that live in a different town? Are these like those sorts of connections that you're making? And oftentimes kids would say, they'd be like, yeah, if Snapchat was the highest one, it's like, okay, they're talking to their friends that they know at school and they're just at home. Would it be better for them to just call them or FaceTime them or meet them at the park or meet up and study together? Or, hey, let's both play volleyball or join the track team and like hang out after school that way? Yes, those are much better options. But in terms of options, we have perfect, we have good, and then we have 4 hours on TikTok all by myself, just scrolling in a dark room, just like this, dead to the world. And the other results that I got from the phone detox challenge were that many kids really started to understand in just like 2.5 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
kids really started to understand, oh, wow, this is bad. This is a problem. I
So
don't
they
wanna
were
spend my time
pretty
like this.
self-aware that, okay, this is damaging.
Took a while to develop that self-awareness and the desire to change, but yes, anyone, if you show them really how bad it is. And then the other thing is, they would often ask, what am I supposed to do? They can't envision a life without it. The deal with it is it's so addicting. All of those sites and stuff are so addicting that doesn't allow you to dream and think bigger and to be bored and then be creative. You can't deeply consider what else you could be doing.
Boredom can be good.
You're stuck in it. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. Those numbers are staggering.
19 hours.
That's wild. Good for you for highlighting it. And hopefully our audience can take this to heart too and take a look at their phones, both for themselves and definitely their kids, and put in place some habits.
The other thing that is a very big cheat code that I'll always tell people is plug your phone in. If you have a certain time of day, if your phone is next to you available all the time, it's problematic. If you know from the hours of 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., that's when you struggle being on your phone, plug it in at the kitchen counter where there's nowhere to sit. And the only way you can use it is like you walk over there and you have to stand up and you have to use it. Or just plug it in a different room or something like that. The second thing is airplane mode and silent. I always have my phone on silent. Always.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same.
Airplane mode. I always put my phone on airplane mode like an hour before I'm going to go to bed. Sometimes even earlier than that because I'm like, all right, did I get everything done? Do I need to be checking anything? No, I just need to be hanging out with my wife and now my daughter, right?
So those are some good hacks. I'm going to try the airplane mode one. I definitely have mine on silent.
I do though always have mine also on silent because hearing as you're just sitting and saying ring 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 ring, right? It gets very annoying.
This was a really fun conversation.
Do you have any final advice for the GSD Nation?
I guess my final advice would be when you're looking to make change is hard. Technology is hard to figure out. Big change on societal levels is hard. The hardest things are best solved with a big dose of love and compassion. That's what's really worked for me, and it's much more healthy and frankly is much more effective.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
I like that.
All right.
I like that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, Mitchell, thank you so
guys.
much for coming on our podcast and talking about this topic, which is so important. It's maybe one of the more important cultural issues that we have going on today, and I think our audience is going to really enjoy it.
I loved it too. This was really, really great. As you can tell, I get pretty jazzed talking about this stuff. If it helps a person or two, that's always my motto as a teacher. If I help a kid or two, if I help a person or two, or whatever, like that is worth it. You're right. It's important, and the conversations are where the change starts.
Amazing. Well, best of luck to you on your new endeavors and your beautiful baby girl. So congrats on being a new father. It's an unbelievable and amazing experience, I can say, with these two clowns I've got here.
I can see it. I can see it. I'm excited.
So you've got a lot of
He says that with love.
No.
Clowns are fun.
that was with compassion.
They were fun.
Anyway, you got a lot of good times ahead of you on that, and appreciate you coming on the show. And with that, we'll call it a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the show, help us out. Like, subscribe, share, leave us a review. Until next time.